I think my task is very simple. I have to discuss the aspect of the economy. And the good thing about doing business till Jesus comes, you do it in the context of where you are. And Acts chapter 17 is very clear, isn't it? Verse 28. God has given us areas with boundaries where we are supposed to live. And within those confines, we are supposed to practice our Christianity, live our lives on this earth. And for us, the context is very clear. Our boundaries are within the borders of Zimbabwe. So we need to have a conversation about what this landscape looks like. And understanding it is actually part of the wisdom that defines what kind of business people will be. All right? Appreciating that context will help you to understand when certain people or certain aspects of practicing your business call for things you shouldn't do. I don't know if you appreciate what I'm trying to say. So we are coming from a very important context where the COVID pandemic has changed a number of things. I want to believe those that do business can accept this fact here, which is pretty much everyone in here, isn't it? That the way we now do business has really changed because of the pandemic. And what has also happened is even economies themselves have also changed. And Jesus says the children of this world, they are wiser than us sometimes. Because they have this appreciation of things that we sometimes don't think is necessary. So we just want to bring it to the fore. Hopefully we'll have a quick conversation and we'll take it away. But I just, termed this conversation reimagining a pandemic bruised economy. And we are doing business till Jesus comes. All right. So if we move to the next slide, that's who I am. But I hope this is visible. I just wanted to start with this quotation from the book Desire of Ages. All right. So the quotation says, God's ideal for his children is higher than the highest human thought can reach. Do you follow the thinking here? It says, when God looks at us as his children, what he is expecting from us is something that we cannot even begin to imagine. Yes. Are you there? And because of that, when we do business as Seventh-day Adventist Christians, it cannot be ordinary business. If we are still doing the ordinary, where things are happening in that other way, we have not yet arrived. Because God's ideal is actually higher than what? And he says, be therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. Imagine if God were to be the CEO of your business. What would it look like? And he says, this command to be perfect in the things that we do is a promise. What is it saying? When we will do business the way we are supposed to do it, according to how God wants us to do it, there is a promise. There is a command to do it with perfection, which is also a promise that you will help us to do it with what? Perfection. And I like this way of thinking. So let's move to the next one. Why do we talk economics when we are doing business? So one of the reasons why the economy is important when we do business, I'll just give you context. In the big picture, when you are thinking about your business is influenced by the environment in which you operate, which is Zimbabwe for you. All right? And then within the environment, there is also an environment of the industry in where you operate. So there is the big picture environment, then there is the industry in which you actually do business. Okay? And then ultimately, there is things that you can do as a response to that environment. So the big picture is what we call the general environment. We'll discuss this. Then what you do internally is what we call the task environment. So this is your understanding of your businesses. And then the way you respond is how you then create an environment within your own business. So because of your understanding of these things, you will create a business. So what we are calling design components here is your business. So your business is supposed to be having the technology. When we say technology, we are not only talking about computers, the machines that you use to produce. So your technology is influenced by where you are and your industry, the people that you work with, I hope the majority of them are Seventh-day Adventist Christians, and then you create a structure, and then you manage within that structure, then there should be a culture of doing business. This culture is the one that I relate to when you talk about that quotation that we started with. The culture of perfection. Doing it according to how God wants it to be what? To be done. Then ultimately you can deliver what you want to do as a business. So how are we going to structure this conversation? You can move with me. So we'll just briefly look at the global economy. What is it looking like at the moment? Then we talk about Africa, where we are doing business. We look at Zimbabwe. We look at some of the key issues that bother you every day in Zimbabwe. Money supply, exchange rate issues, inflation. And then we look at the different sectors. I'll just talk about a few. Generally, this conversation is something that you would have to pay me a lot of money for. And then you need to spend a minimum of maybe 2 hours having a conversation. So we'll try and do it in 30 minutes. You will forgive me. My intention is not to shortchange anyone. All right, so let's talk about the global economy. What has happened over the years? And some of the things you need to appreciate as you understand where you are doing business until Jesus comes is what has been happening around us. And I want us to appreciate, I'm one of those people that fall in the class that try to link economics to the Bible. So it's a growing class of economists that believe that certain things about the economy can also be found within the Bible. One of the key things we've discovered is that the economic cycle itself was first discussed by Joseph in Genesis, in those 7 years of plenty, 7 years of few. That's how the cycle goes. So many learned it from there, but of course, I mean, the Bible is not very talked about. But here we need to acknowledge that God has given us the wisdom to understand that things will not always be the same. They come in cycles. And this is something that you see throughout the Bible. There will be famine. People change places to go. That's like changing your strategy as things are changing. So biblically, you can actually put economics into context. All right. So what has happened over the years? So I looked at this probably maybe 40 or so year period that we are talking about, 40 to 42. So what has happened? Can you move there? So over the years, since 1980, this is what you have been seeing. So there have been a number of crises that have happened in the world. So the first one that you will see there is what we call the Great Depression. So generally what we have seen over the years is there are what we call macroeconomic linkages. So if something happens in a place that affects how you do business, even if it's not in Zimbabwe, it will affect you. Like at the moment, problems of COVID in China have constrained the supply chain. So there are certain things you used to buy which you can't find on the shelves because there is a problem in China. So we talk about those as macroeconomic linkages. The world is becoming what we call a global village. So as it becomes linked, you cannot ignore the things that are happening around you and live in isolation. If you were to think about it, think the Great Controversy. So the Great Controversy, tenet and motif says what we see happening today is a result of cosmic issues that are happening in the heavenly places. Are you with me? So it's just the same thing that we are doing here. So there was the Great Depression, and then within those 4 years, there was the problem of the oil issue, the Cold War, and another recession that came in. And then another event that took place there is what we call the tequila crisis. So there was a problem in Mexico which affected the whole globe, all right? And then if you move again, you see that there was the currency crisis that took place in Russia when the Russian ruble was... Russia is always at the center of some of these things at times. So this is the first 24 years. The first 20 years, sorry. You see this forward crisis. And every time these events happened, the global economy would be affected. So go to the next 4 years. You start with the dot-com bubble. I don't know if you followed this. The internet story came with a few challenges. And as it came, it bursted and there was problems. And then also followed by the next one. Move to the next one. I'll discuss this. So you would see the global financial crisis. This was around about 2008. I think you remember this one. I don't know if you follow economic issues. And then the last one in this 20-year period is COVID. So what we do sometimes, we follow these trends. And what we have seen over the years is generally major crises that are going to affect your business. You usually have a minimum of 4 of them in a 20-year period. Okay? So you take 20 years, divide by 4, you see a 5-year cycle. I mean, if you were to do it properly, you see that every 5 years, something major is going to happen that you always need to think about as a business. I don't know if you follow where I'm coming from. So usually these are the things that we follow. And what we have also done is we have tried to, this is the global economy in the various countries clustered together. Economies have grown within the range of around about 7% to roughly around 1% to 7%. So the average economic growth we have seen over this 40-year period has been this. So this 20-year period is beginning, and how does it start? Russia, Ukraine. And every time, if you go back, every time you see these things happening, please go back to the next one. Every time you see them happening, you see this downturn. All these moves that you see there, these are the things that we worry about. Because every time you see this, it means the global economy is actually slowing down. Business conditions are actually becoming difficult. So this is COVID. And what we have seen over the years is, previously, the crises were not as significant as you are seeing now. So if you are doing business in this period, you were fine a bit. But from here, the impacts have been big. So if this was the global financial crisis, I don't know if you were doing business during this time, but COVID, you were definitely there. So you see what's happening as the time is moving. And biblically, we can also put this into context. Daniel chapter 2. In that image, it tells you that the value of economies are going to decline over time. And you can actually prove it. You see what's happening? So if the Russian has not yet fully played out, where do you think it's going? So actually projections are that the global economy is going to grow at its slowest pace after the Russian war relative to any other period we've seen in history. So you start seeing these things playing out. And if you are a Christian, where Jesus is saying we need to be wise, it definitely means the way you do business cannot be ordinary anymore. Because you do ordinary things, they are going to disappear. Because I tell you, there are businesses that were swept away because of COVID. As we speak, some of us have started new businesses in here because of COVID. So you ignore this, it's only at your peril. All right? What else have we seen? When you look at the global economy, this is what we call the economic heat map. So growth itself comes in different phases. So the colors depict where you get the quality of growth. So if it's red, that economy is going to actually be contracting at about 3%. If it's this oranges, it's going to contract by between 3% and 0%, so stagnating. And then if it's in the light green, which is where we are sitting as Zimbabwe, all right? So an economy is likely to grow by 3 to 6%, and then darker green, 6+%. And if you were to move to the next one, this is where we dwell. And this is the place where growth is. What does it mean for us as Africans? The future is here. And definitely you cannot, there are many who are, you know what, I've heard this story about, you cannot separate politics and economics. I agree. But I think if you were to follow Acts chapter 17, verse 28, God has a very special purpose for this region. Can't you see? There is something that's supposed to happen here. And businesses thrive on numbers. For your own record. You cannot do business in an economy that has 2 million people. You won't go anywhere. You need numbers. So Dangote can arise out of Nigeria because of the 167, almost 200 million people. And there are over 1.4 billion people in this part of and actually if you study these things properly, there is a geopolitics in play here. This is actually the biggest continent of all of these put together, but it always appears the smallest. Okay. So the narrative is also very critical. So this map in the past, when you look at it, if you do landmass computations, Africa is definitely much bigger than all of these other continents. But when you see them being depicted, it looks like it's smallish. The idea is to inculcate in your mind small-mindedness. You see now? And God has not created us. Remember, we teach the idea of equality. God has created us all equal. And believe you me, if you hear about Nimrod, these are called the black sons of Noah, if you do biblical history. All right? The Nimrod, the great, the black sons of Noah were the first ones to dominate the world. And when you talk about us, it looks like we only need to refer to businesses done by other people and forget ourselves. But God's ideal for us is higher than human thought. And as we discuss economics, don't take your Christianity away from it. This is what will make the difference. A Christian who is a business person will definitely deliver better than someone who's not a Christian. But take a Christian who is a Seventh-day Adventist Christian and make them a business person. God is expecting more. If I were on the pulpit, I would be quoting where Ellen White says, no group of people has been given a responsibility in this world that's bigger than what has been given to Seventh-day Adventists. It is as certain as God lives that we have the truth. So if the truth is with us, what kind of businesses should be coming from us? And even our understanding of things. So don't be casual when you do your business. Be thorough, on point, appreciate the issues. You see, the other time when I was in business school, I met this lecturer. And this lecturer has this theory. He takes a stone at the beginning of every year, puts the world map down, and throws a stone. Wherever the stone lands is where they travel. And when they get there, they don't get there to live a flashy life. They move around the country to understand the country. So this man told me things about Zimbabwe that I don't even know. He has traveled to this, and he has a detailed understanding of all the resources we possess as a country. And he was actually educating me. And my area, line of expertise, I advise businesses. So I was being advised by someone who does not stay in Zimbabwe. Yes. And this is our biggest challenge when we do business in Africa. We wait for people to come. We can do these things, all right? So if you move here with me, I think I'll just roughly move again. I'll just try to just give context. So, on the other one. So context here is you realize that if you put the Euro area, America and China together, they influence 80% of the economic activity you find on the globe. So Europe, the US and China, put them together, they influence 80% of the economic activity you find in this world. So because of that, if China sneezes, you cannot ignore China. It's at your peril. This is why COVID itself is giving everyone a problem as we speak. Because China is in trouble. All right? And if the politics and the economics of America go the other way, we are definitely at risk. So at the moment, the American economy, they are raising interest rates. So that's the price of money in their economy. They are raising interest rates. And if a country raises interest rates, a central bank, usually what happens is the value of your currency, it increases. Because remember, interest rates are the price of money. Yes. So if your money becomes, it becomes more valuable. So as the US economy is increasing interest rates, the US dollar is actually, appreciating. And we are all feeling it. There is no economy that's not feeling the heat of the increasing in value of the US dollar. So if you want to appreciate where you are likely going to find yourself, ask the question, if I do business, so why do we understand these things? If you do business and you are generating Zimbabwean dollars, it's a very dangerous game for you to play to have obligations that are in US dollars. I don't know if you follow what I'm trying to say. We call that currency risk because you have a mismatch between the money that you receive and what you spend. You can't spend dollars and generate Zimbabwean dollars. That way of doing business is what has killed many. I don't know if you are following where I'm coming from. So at times when we do business, God's people, let's try and appreciate what we need to be doing. So even us ourselves, when we give to the church, if the church has US dollar obligations and we are giving it RTGS, what are we doing? Because in your business, if you do it tomorrow, it won't be there. So what are you saying about God's church? The business person in it, the ordinary member I can understand, but the business person in here, I know we are all accessing dollars somewhere. You actually want to give God, you go and convert it and put it in, that kind of, actually, and we are suffering because of the economic activity that's taking place in America. The church is feeling the heat in Zimbabwe. So if you move to the next slide, what am I trying to say here? So if you look at Africa itself, they say most of the fastest growing economies are going to be sitting in Africa. All right? So you actually need to be thinking about that. But what are the challenges that are likely to come through if you do business in Africa? At the moment, there are likely to be adverse shocks due to commodity prices. So Africa itself is a commodity-driven continent. So we do gold, we do iron ore, we do copper, we do, like if you go to Zambia, take out copper, that economy will die. Come to Zimbabwe, take out gold, you start seeing a few things, platinum, whatever, you go to the soft commodities, all right? Those are all things that are affecting who we are. So these prices have went up during COVID time. And because they went up, so the cycle that was happening was a very interesting one. So commodities are extracted in Africa, they go to the rest of the world, they are processed, and they come here to be consumed back in Africa. And they leave Africa cheaply, they come back to Africa very expensive. And this has been our cycle also. So the other way in which we are doing business is we are producing raw materials. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Those inputs, that's what we produce in Africa. Then the world converts the raw materials into goods and services. Then they sell them back to us. And we pay a lot of money. So if you are doing business, I think if you hear people talking about beneficiation, they are saying try and improve the quality of the output from your business. Okay? Don't produce raw materials. And then the other thing that's likely to happen is weakening currencies. I think we have seen this for a Zimbabwean. So they did a survey. If you meet an ordinary Zimbabwean, we are probably the only population in the world that has got a very apt knowledge of currencies more than any other. If you go to South Africa, ask them about exchange rates between different currencies. They don't even know. They predominantly know the rand. Even if you take the dollar there, you struggle to transact with the dollar unless you convert it to. So this is the ordinary life. But if you come meet a Zimbabwean, I can tell you the yuan rate, I can tell you even the Polish zloty, you will find it in Zimbabwe. There are these currencies that you think don't exist. You will find them here. That's how knowledgeable we've become. So this idea of currencies is something that we are very knowledgeable about. So there is likely to be an energy crisis. And this energy, you realize Africa also produces a lot of it. But we are going to suffer because raw materials. And then the other thing is debts. Our economies are heavily indebted. We have borrowed a lot of money. So what has been happening because of our activities, if you are operating in Zimbabwe, there are a few things that I would just want us to appreciate. So here is the exchange rate. Okay? So it's a very short period. So this is from January 2021. This is how far the Zimbabwean dollar is depreciated. All right? On that other market. All right? And then on the official one, this is how much it has depreciated. So why should you understand this issue of exchange rates? When you plan businesses, my boss is here, my chimponda. So, if you plan and you are budgeting, one of the things that you do in business is you plan. And Jesus says, be wary of he gave a parable of a man who was trying to build a house. It says, be careful, lest you start building and you fail to finish. Remember that story? All right. So you always need to plan when you do business. And planning requires certain things to be predictable. When we say predictable, is you can easily see where they are likely to be. One of the key things is an exchange rate. So if you plan today and you know the exchange rate, and you are sure that in the next 1 year the exchange rate is still going to be, let's say it's 700 today, and you know that after 1 year it's going to be 700, you can plan your things without challenges. But if it's 700 today, and you plan, and you wake up tomorrow it's 1,000, that plan is now useless. Okay? So the exchange rates bring about what we call foreign exchange rate risk in businesses. So if you are a business person and you are seeing this playing out, you are probably doing it, but I'm not sure how you have been doing it. But you need to think about this because it's affecting you. But where does it come from? Why does the exchange rate start doing this? Exchange rate and inflation are always a monetary phenomenon. What does that mean? So this is the amount of money that you find. This gray line is the amount of money that's being injected into the Zimbabwean economy. Okay, you are there. And that, I'm not sure that dark blue line, all right, is the exchange rate, and this light blue is inflation. Do you see how? So this gray line is what we call the leader line. So if you increase money supply, the exchange rate is likely to depreciate and inflation is likely to go up. So they always follow each other. All right? So if I had time, I would have shown you how much money we have created this year alone as a country. So when you see our exchange rates depreciating, don't have the wrong discussion. The issue is not exchange rates. The issue is the amount of money being injected into the economy. So when you meet the authorities, you are having the wrong discussion. Don't discuss exchange rates. They are the symptoms. Money supply is your problem. And inflation is the thermometer. Is it like you get to a doctor and they say, are you well, whatever, let's do checks, and they put that thermometer in your armpit or in the ear, whatever, and then they see it's 39. They say you are sick. They start looking for the cause of sickness. For you, it's very simple. Once you hear inflation being announced and you hear it being very high, it's like high temperature, go to money supply. That's what you treat. So central banks, which is like the RBZ in our case, is always trying to manage the amount of money in the economy. So when we talk about monetary authorities, their idea is managing money supply. So they can increase money supply or reduce money supply, all in a bid to manage inflation. But if they become irresponsible and just start pouring money into the economy, everyone is going to be sick. And that's where we are coming from. So what has the world done? And usually, so to link this with that diagram that I showed you of the crisis, usually what happens if the world economy experiences a crisis, the best way for most economies to respond is to either increase money supply or increase spending, government spending. So money supply is what we call monetary policy. Government spending is what we call fiscal policy. So Mtuli Ngube deals with fiscal policy, government spending, all right? Dr. Mangunjka deals with monetary policy, money supply, all right? So when you see the government spending a lot of money, sometimes the reason why governments spend is to try and stimulate economic activity. All right, let's bring this home to your businesses. Businesses that only pay dividends will never survive. You know the types of businesses I'm talking about. The ones that if you are operating them, they are the ones that buy grocery at home, that everyone, the maid is paid from this very same, you see that way of doing business. You are ever withdrawing from your business. Businesses grow by investing back in them. We call that capital expenditure. So at a global level, move to the next slide. I just want to tie these two together. At a global level, I don't know why this became black. It's usually blue for me. So at a global level, the country invests back into itself. And when you see the roads, the infrastructure, those things, that's a country investing into its own capacity. When it does that, it's creating what we call fixed capital. So we measure what is called gross fixed capital formation. How much money from our fiscus has been spent on capital issues? So building roads, building schools, hospitals, dams, things that create capacity for businesses, things that you need for you to be able to do business. Imagine you have a shop in a place where the road is not good. Chances are, even if your shop is up there, you are not going to get business because there is no infrastructure to take you there. So you cannot exist outside the government as a business. You coexist. You need each other. So you should be worried when Tulingube is announcing the budget. You can't sit at home and sleep in your blankets. You are actually planning to fail. Because you need to know what's going to happen to your business, particularly your sector. Yes. You see what you are worried about? So you realize there are countries here. These lines represent 4 countries. One of the countries is Zimbabwe. The other one is China. The other one is Rwanda. The other one is South Africa. So this line here, ordinarily for a country to remain viable, you need to spend a minimum of 20% of your total budget on capital things. Minimum. All right? So this is where you are supposed to be. So countries that have grown, the ones that we talk about, the big ones, you see them, their lines are always above this blue line. These are so if you look at this one, this is Rwanda, this is China, all right? And this is South Africa. And guess which one is Zimbabwe? So since 1980, we have only spent 20% of our budget on infrastructure in 2 years. 2 periods. This one, and probably this one, I think. That's so realize this is 42 years. And if you are a business person and you don't reinvest back in your business, you don't buy machinery, no parts, no whatever, do you think in 40 years your business will still be functional? Now you understand why we are where we are, isn't it? And now we have to do things that are dangerous. One of them is we now need to build roads at a very, high rate. And when you do that, you create money supply. Why? Because the money you are using to build the roads is not money that is coming from your businesses, the outside economy and investors. It's money that's coming from the fiscus. And money that comes from the fiscus is usually coming from you because it's taxpayers' money. And when you use that money, we say it's not neutral. It's a type of money, it's an economic term, but what it simply means is it's very inflationary. And for 40 years, we were not, so I don't know where the engineers are. So the other day I was talking to an engineering business, those that do civils, and they were telling me that to spend a centimeter of a road, I think you need about, they say it's about how many? I think they were saying 10 millimeters per year or something. I don't know what they were saying. But when I did it, I then spoke to the guys who were doing, back then they were doing the Bulawayo Mutare Road, the highway. And they added close to about 40 millimeters, I think. It was like they were adding 40 years that we had lost of investing on that time. So you realize some of the things that are affecting us now are things we were supposed to do that we did not do. So if it's at a country level, this is what happens if you don't invest. What happens in your own businesses? So you realize the economy itself is where we are because we have not been putting things back into the economy. And we like to buy things from out of Zimbabwe, a lot of them. And you are actually weakening local businesses at times. And for me, I always have this argument as we move to the next slide. Please let me know when my time is up. When am I supposed to finish? What time?
5 more.
5 more? Yeah, this is always a problem for me, so don't worry. Even if you stop me midway, I think I would have done most of the things I need to do. So the other challenge that we face when we see these things is what then should we be doing as businesses? And in which areas? What are we seeing? All right? So because of what has happened over the last few years, commodity prices have really started going up. So three key problems are facing us. One of them is inflation, and it's linked to commodity prices. All right? The other one is limited spending, also because of inflation. All right? And then the other scenario that's facing us is, so we have recessions that are coming through because some economies were not properly run because of the effects of COVID. So what we have now are certain areas that are beginning to come back into the fore. And what has happened is certain parts of the economy have become better than others because of what has taken place. One of them is the commodity side. So you see commodity prices are actually going up. It's like if you were a wheat farmer, and because of what happened in Russia. So Russia probably contributes between 27 and 35% of the world's wheat. Do you know that Russia and Ukraine put together are not even 1/5 of the African continent? Arable land that you find in Africa is way, way more than what you find in Russia and Ukraine put together. But there was a war in Russia and Ukraine, and the whole world did not have wheat. And Africa was there. So agriculture itself has become a very viable business in certain ways. You see where you are? So, but it's the space that you are occupying. So understanding this tells you where should you be going. And you should also be having that type of farming that allows you to do what we call crop rotation. Don't be a cereal maize farmer. Don't call yourself a business person if you only farm one crop. Because in a year where there is a bumper harvest, you don't have money. We saw it recently. And we are the ones who start making noise. We are just failing to appreciate the basics of how these things work. Okay? And then infrastructure, I talked about it, manufacturing. So these are the sectors that are actually beginning to show signs of strength as you look at them. So I just wanted to highlight these 5 key ones. One of them is mining, agriculture, there are opportunities, infrastructure. This country needs a lot of infrastructure. If you play in this space, you are likely to benefit. And then manufacturing. One of the biggest challenges of our time is we are being taught that we need to do what is called import substitution. The weakness of import substitution is you are busy trying to do things that you don't have a competitive advantage on. We do what is called export oriented economics. So you need to produce things that you are good at, that are consumed by the rest of the world. So let's say Zimbabwe is good at manufacturing cars. Zimbabwe should not do tires because tires, they are better than maybe, let's say, in India. Do the thing. So you find most of these economies we are talking about, they don't do everything. They have specialties. They've learned that we are good in this. This is what we focus on. And the rest of the world imports from them. Like Russia and Ukraine. Gas, oil, you will need them. Fertilizer, there are many things you can talk about. So they have a number of things that they know that the rest of the world will take from us. And they are not going to compete with Zimbabwe on things that Zimbabwe can do better than them. But we want to be a jack of all trades. That kills you. Even as a business, don't become an entrepreneur that does everything. Specialize. Okay, let me stop there because of time. I think professionally I was taught to stop when my time is up. If you get more time, we can have this conversation separately. Thank you.